Hello guys, welcome again to the channel. Today, today I want to share with you my part of my story, my personal story, and this is especially about my relationships and how I got to the point where I am. If you're not aware, currently I have a stable romantic relationship already for almost 2 years. So this has been my story before today, and this is the summary of the topics I'm going to discuss with you involving childhood, adolescence, adulthood, my first relationship, my marriage, my divorce, and my quest for love in general. So starting from childhood, my family and siblings. I have four brothers, three brothers, including myself. We are four of them. We have no sisters, and my parents were married all the time since I got married until my mother died a few years ago. So the important thing I wanted to say about this is how it was my relationship with my parents and with my siblings. Especially, I like to play alone. They got together between themselves and played together, but uh, somehow we never really connected with each other. Relationships were never very close between us. For some reason, they connected very well between each other, but not with me. So this led me to the point where I was always playing alone. I learned to enjoy time by myself without involving them, and there was a lot of let's say some kind of animosity between us, especially with my older brother. I'm the third of the among the fourth, so the older brother was my oldest brother, the first one. He was always having this kind of rivalry with me, so we were always kind of fencing with each other, and he never beat me to it. So there was some kind of a very strange rivalry between us. This never stopped. So anyway, that's how this exerted some influence on myself. And I remember from my childhood that I had this kind of unusual dream. This happened sometime probably when I was around 7 years old. Someone asked me, "Okay, so what is your dream? What do you want to do in the future?" And I said something along the lines of, "I want to find a good woman and get married." Something like this, which was, I think, highly unusual for a 7-year-old to say, but I still remember what was my answer to this question. So somehow, since early age, I was very much aware of what I wanted in life in regards to relationships and life in general was for me, some kind of extension of my relationships with others. And during this period of childhood, we traveled a lot. Every year we had a vacation during summer, and we were traveling to different places every year during this period, during school vacation. I always thought this was normal. I always thought that every family was like this. So we travel all the family We were doing like a road trip in the car, and we went sometimes very, very far. I can't remember exactly, how many weeks or something like that the vacations lasted, but it was like a happy childhood memory for me. Also, during this period, we relocated to different cities. So, during the years that were from my first year in school up to the sixth year in school, I was in six different schools. So, not it wasn't exactly 1 year in each school. Sometimes it was two schools in a single year. So it was this kind of story. We really traveled a lot, and we also relocated a lot. But somehow this influenced me in my desire to, I don't know, look for novelty, try to find new things, and I was always happy to make new friends. And this was something that, at least from my side, it was a welcome experience. And starting from the adolescence, I started to have more interaction with different people. Actually, my first, you can say, experience of some kind of romanticism or sex, if you want to call it, was when I was very young, when I was still a child. Probably I was around 10 years old. There was an older girl that she was interested in me, so she wanted to teach me how to kiss, and we kissed. I still remember the experience, and it was a pleasant experience. But I think I never saw her again, so we didn't have that kind of connection between us. She probably was just curious about it, exploring her sexuality. Like I said, she was older, probably around 12, 13, something like this. She was still young, but definitively older than me. And I always thought it kind of gave me a good experience in life. Like the first kiss experience, it was a very good one, even though a little bit unusual. Definitively, we didn't have like a relationship like even back then, and I think I never saw her again, or very rarely. Like I said, we moved from different cities, so it was probably not the best period to have this kind of relationships. So starting from this part, I started to have some friendships that I still have until this time. I still have friends from this time, and I had a good relationship with my classmates. But what I remember the most about this time, it was how I wasn't very shy. I was always talking to girls, especially the most beautiful ones. For some reason, I never found any problems talking to girls, and I never thought it was interesting to talking to the girls that I didn't like. I had, let's say, this kind of standards that I like to talk to the girls I like, and not to other girls that were not as beautiful according to my adolescent standards. And so we had a good relationship with girls during this time, but for some reason there I never had a relationship as such. I talked to many girls, interacted with them in different ways, during classes or during summer, and all kinds of relationships with girls, but never had like a real romantic relationship during this period. It's not that I didn't want it. It's probably it's just didn't lend itself to it. The whole period, it was like that. I wasn't really looking for this. I was, of course, very interested in girls. I had some friendships with girls, but in general, it didn't go any further than that. And during this period, I was, of course, very rebellious. I was always questioning authority, so my relationships with adults were not the best. Not with my parents. I never had this kind of conflicts. My parents were always some kind of very normal adults, at least in my perspective. But I had, my period of rebelliousness. I was hanging out with some classmates that were also very rebellious. So it was this kind of period for myself. We weren't harming anyone, but we were, certainly not the standard kind of behavior from expected from the normal student. I had constant problems with schools, teachers, authority in general. It wasn't for me the best period. I had this idealism period where I saw myself as the future adult, and I wanted to be different from the adults that I saw. I remember this conversation with one of my closest friends, and I was kind of in a very sad way saying, "So, are we going to be like this when we grow up? Like so corrupt, so I don't know. I think I didn't want to see. I wasn't looking forward to being an adult, especially not the adults that I was looking at. So it was during this period that I found some philosophy. I was very interested in esotericism, in spirituality, and I had one of my friends who went with me into these kind of groups. It really shaped my life. It gave me some kind of purpose, somehow a way to focus on my rebelliousness. So it was now an inner rebelliousness, where I was rebellious against myself, not just with society as a whole. And then it came adulthood. So this is a period that I chose to refer to as adulthood, from 18 to 25, which is when in my country you are old enough to have all kinds of adult decisions. So that's when I was starting to become more active, searching for a relationship, and it was during this time when I was actively pursuing some girls that I thought they were beautiful, and I was my approach to them was not very clumsy, but I didn't have any results. For some reason, the girls I like didn't like me back. So maybe I had very high standards. I don't know what is it. I had interested in sports, and I was very cautious to girls, and it was during this time when I had an interest in storytelling from the point of view of writing stories, writing short stories, writing poems. It was during this time when I became interested in this. I was kind of good at it. I still do it. I do some short stories. I write poetry still for my girlfriend. And this was this kind of time where I made also a lot of I make a lot of friends. I had good relationship with my classmates, and I had good relationships with my colleagues, because it was during this period where I started to work as well after I finished university. But this idealism that started earlier, became more serious. So I became even a teacher of this philosophy that I was interested in, this spirituality that I discovered earlier. I became a teacher, so I had a school. It was something good for me, something that I really like to do. And it was a very good period where even though I still wanted to find actively was looking for a relationship with a girl, I just couldn't find it. It just didn't happen. When I found my first relationship, I was 25 years old, and this girl I found was my first girlfriend. Of course, even though I had, some, let's say, flirting and some make out with some other girls during the previous years, it never amounted to anything. Um, I was still a virgin when I got married. So this first relationship, I met this girl in the group where I was going to, this spiritual group, philosophy group that I was mentioning. So it was like ideal relationship for both of us. For her, it was also her first boyfriend. She was probably 21 at the time, so we had something like 4 years age gap between us. So it was, a very good period for myself. We had a lot of romanticism, and this idealism became part of the relationship. I was very much interested in having a marriage with her. Since the start, this was mutual, and it was just very pleasant, very nice relationship. We had only one argument during the entire relationship, and it was because of some girl that was also interested in me, and I visited her during some holiday. I was also interested in that girl, but then I thought about it, and I decided, that I really did want to stay with my girlfriend, and we continued until we reached the next stage, which was the marriage. So I was married in total for 14 years, from 27 to 41. Even though the marriage itself lasted 14 years, let's say the best part of the marriage was the first 10 years, and the last portion of it was not so much, as I will tell you later. So what I want to say about this period is that as part of the marriage, part of the spiritual practices that we learned together, it was Tantra, and we were practicing Tantra in our marriage. So we had regular sex during this time, especially during the first 10 years. I vividly remember that we had sex practically every day, except during the periods where she was having her menstruation, which was kind of our belief. So it is very nice to have this kind of sex with someone that you are married with. So for me, marriage was the best time of my life. I was enjoying it. We had a good companionship, and we never had any arguments. Nothing big during the first 10 years, and even until the end, we never had like big arguments. We never had any fights. We're never separated, not even for a single time. It was just an ideal marriage overall. We traveled a lot. Right after we got married, I got an offer to work in another country, so I worked there. It was not so long, but it was kind of the start. Then during the course of our marriage, we lived in probably uh, 10 different cities. It was always because of my job. I work with computers, so because of my job, I was doing consulting, and I was going to live in different places. And even from the start, I told her, if we're going to get married, we're going to travel a lot. Somehow, I had this expectation or some kind of dream realization that I was going to travel a lot because I was traveling before when I was very young, like I mentioned before. And we really had a good time. The money was good, the work was good, and overall I was very happy. It was probably one of the happiest periods of my life. I thought being married it was the ideal situation for a man. I still believe that, even though my marriage ended. I still believe that marriage is the best thing that can happen to a man or to a woman, but I cannot speak for them. But that's my belief. I have a Christian belief, so I believe in love everlasting. This is definitely for me a conviction. And what I wanted to say about love, it was the fact that I remember having a happy marriage, but somehow I didn't love her. If that makes any sense, in the meaning that I didn't have these very strong romantic feelings. Somehow they weren't there. It was just kind of my emotional development, I think, because I felt attracted to her. We had, of course, very good attraction, good sexual chemistry, but for some reason I didn't feel love as such. And I was very honest about this. I think she even questioned me a few times whether I loved her, and I told her, no, I really don't love you. I like you, I like being with you, I'm happy with you, but I just couldn't say that I love her. For some reason, I could not explain it. It was probably just part of my emotional development. I just didn't feel, or maybe in my own concept, what I was feeling, because I had emotions, I have feelings for her, but what I felt in my own concept, it wasn't love. So what happened, like I was mentioning, it was that after the 10th year, problems started, and that's what we are going to talk about right now. So during this period, after the 10th year, let's say the circumstances were such that we had a very good economy. I had just gotten a new job, which was like a considerable pay raise compared to the previous one. It was the same company, but in a different city. We moved to this city to be closer to our relatives, because before we were living very far from them, and in this new city we were, within kind of a good distance that we could travel there, let's say during the weekend, and come back. It was something doable, and we were certainly, this was kind of the project. At the time, like I said, the economy was really good, but for some reason, initially the conflict started with the excuse of the money situation. She was complaining that she didn't feel like it was the best time of her life. Actually, she complained that she didn't like the neighborhood. She didn't like the house, which was a new house in a new neighborhood. I mean, all of our neighbors were new in the area. So something she didn't like. It was like a house, a regular house, not even an apartment. So it was like a town home, if you want to call it. Um, So it didn't make sense, the excuse for this, and she kind of accused me of being a bad manager, if that makes any sense. Like, you're the head of the household. She was complaining that I wasn't a good manager, I wasn't doing things in the right way. And this continued for some time until I told her, okay, so if you're not happy, let's get a divorce. And I even called a lawyer. The lawyer went to talk to her. After that, she decided to back out and say, okay, let's try to find a solution for this. So we talked about it, and somehow I think a big influence on this was one of her friends. I couldn't say specifically who it was. I don't know, maybe this friend or relative, I don't know. Talked to her and told her, okay, maybe you can do better, you can have better things, maybe you can push him to do more for you. I don't know. Honestly, she never really explained what was the situation. What I think it had some influence was the fact that she wasn't working. So when we started our marriage, we were traveling and she wasn't working, and that was okay. But later, we had like a long, stable period, and she was working. She had a very good job, and I don't know if that had any influence. But from my point of view, being alone at home was probably having some influence in her emotions, in her mind, and probably because of that, she felt like I wasn't a good husband. And somehow relationship never got better after that. She became a little bit of a bitter person and was constantly attacking me with this kind of low level verbal attacks, talking about men, saying how men are unfaithful, how men always want to find a new wife, a new and younger wife. So she was talking all kinds of negative things about men, but I was the only man next to her, so it was like kind of indirect attack on myself. Our sex life practically disappeared, and for some reason, I didn't see the point of it, because if she wasn't happy with me, how was she expecting sex? If that makes any sense. I guess for men this is normal. If you don't have emotions, you don't have sex. But for women in marriage, somehow they still expect sex, even though the relationship isn't in the best terms. I cannot explain it. So that's how it happened. During the last 4 years, I was struggling with myself, especially because of the marriage vows that I made when we first got married. I just really wanted our marriage to last forever. But somehow I came to the realization at the end that wasn't going to work. She wasn't very interested in making any changes to our relationship or improving anything. So that's when I talked to her and I decided to end the marriage. I talked to her and told her that we should separate and later we should get a divorce. And it was an amicable divorce. Like I was mentioning, we never had any fights even during this period. It was nothing bitter. It was probably just some discussions about some things. And the legal process itself wasn't too difficult. We didn't have any children, so we just kind of talked about one of the houses that we wanted to split. And I was very generous during the divorce settlement, so I didn't have any problems with that. Like I said, it was kind of an ideal marriage until it stopped being ideal. And the emotional consequences of the divorce for me were somehow devastating. I had like some kind of depression during that time, but it was during this time also when I Of course, after the separation, I became more interested in fitness, and I paid more attention to my health, and I decided that I wasn't going to let my emotions take the best of me, and this some kind of dark period didn't last too long. I overcame it and then decided to move on with my life, so it didn't take really too long. And from that time, that was 2011, that was when I was 41 years old until today. I had a lot of failures. I learned a lot of lessons, and what I want to say is that I had the expectations, especially for my new love, for my new partner, were very high. I think this is very healthy. I never wanted to settle. I wanted in my mind, I wanted someone that I really loved, because, like I mentioned before, I didn't feel like I loved. Um, and somehow the divorce and the whole, let's say, the last 4 years of my life became a catalyst. So I became a more emotional person. I was more in contact with my emotions, whereas before I wasn't. So I became a more emotional man, and I became aware of my deepest romantic feelings. So that's why my expectations were very high. I wanted a good woman, honest, especially an honest woman, and someone beautiful that I could love, beautiful inside and outside. I had a lot of expectations for this. I even made a list of all the things I wanted. I think this is also very healthy and very useful. You need to be aware of what you want before you just go out and venture, in the world and try to find what you want. And the search process itself was not very successful. Comparing this to my entire life, I didn't have a lot of experience in relationships. I didn't have any experience whatsoever with dating. Like I mentioned, I never had a girlfriend, so for me it was like I was some kind of teenager with 41 years old. I was practically a virgin. I had sex with only one woman during these 14 years. So it was like a big wake up call for me. I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot of failures. I decided to learn a lot about psychology and relationships and dating. I became involved with the information that is available in books, in videos, online, and all kinds of things because I was really, interested in learning about all these things that I didn't have, all these experiences that I didn't have. And during this period, I met 3 women that were really the best relationships during this period, even though I met some occasionally other women, but they were not interested in something serious, and I didn't have a good result for this. So I want to talk about these relationships, these 2 relationships that I had, and I will do that in the next video. So that's what I wanted to say. If you have any questions or comments, just let me know in the comment section. And as always, I ask you to like the video, share it in social media you think is interesting, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you again very soon. Thank you for watching.